You know, each and every one of us, if you were to ask people who make it big in this life, they would tell you the same thing, that each and every one of us were created for something more than what this world has to offer. Many people in the world have discovered that riches and fame, that making it big do not bring true satisfaction and true happiness in life. In fact, there was a famous Christian author by the name of C.S. Lewis who once said these words. He said, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." You see, we were all created for something more than just the normal 9-to-5 jobs. Something more than just the daily routine of clocking in and out of work. Something more than just the ordinary and the everyday common thing that goes on in our lives. We were created for something more than just the expectations of society and the expectations of our family and our friends and our employers. You see, these things in the world, the things of the world, the parties and the gratification that the world has to offer, these things, they may stimulate us for a moment, but they will never truly satisfy us for a lifetime. They always leave us wanting something more and more. They never truly get us to that point where enough is enough. And so because of this, God, I believe, has planted something in every human heart. No matter where you were born, no matter where you're from, no matter your background or how you grew up, God has planted something in every single human heart. And I want you to notice what that is in our first text this morning in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11. Now, for those of us here, normally I'm used to, and if you watch this online, you'll be able to see the text on the screen. Normally I just go ahead and read it, but I'll give you guys a moment to turn there quickly with me. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 11. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 11. Solomon writing here says these words. He says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time, and also he has set eternity in their heart." Solomon here is talking about the human heart. And he said that God has placed or set eternity in each and every one of our hearts. Now, what does that mean? Eternity in their hearts. What does it mean that God has placed eternity in all of our hearts? Now, I know this is in Sabbath school, so maybe you're not used to just jumping out and saying something, but what does it mean, eternity in their hearts? Something that's everlasting, okay? Yes, God has placed something that's everlasting in our heart. Let me ask you this. Who alone is eternal? Who alone is everlasting? God, right? You see, God has planted in the space of every human heart something that is like an eternal space that can really only be filled by someone who is eternal in nature. Only someone who is eternal can fill that void that is placed in every human heart. And this is why there are many who finally recognize, no matter what their background, that there is something bigger, greater than themselves. They long for it. And like we've heard many people commonly say, there is a God-shaped hole in every single human heart. Now, you know, it's interesting because what I've experienced in my life is that no matter what worldly thing I tried to put in my heart, it always left me feeling empty. And I began to realize in my story that there was something greater than myself. There was something that someone who wanted to fill that void in my heart. And you know, whenever sharing this, especially now applying it to you all, each individually, there are some who say, well, you know, Eric, Are you sure that we need someone to fill, the void in my heart? I mean, I feel pretty good. I mean, I'm a good person. I don't know, there may be some who think, do I really need God in my heart, in my life? Do I really need him there? Well, the truth is this: no matter how good we may think we are, no matter how good we may say we are, the truth is that we have all made mistakes. Isn't that right, friends? We've all said things that we wish we could take back. We all have made promises that we've broken and made decisions we wish we could rewind and do once again. And the reality is this, is that even though we cannot change our past and the mistakes that we have made, the truth is that we can give our past to Jesus Christ. He has the ability to transform and change our past experience and change our present, to not be living always in the past. And this is why God says in the scripture reading we read this morning in Isaiah 43 verses 18 and 19, this is why God says, do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. For behold, I will do a new thing. God says, I have the ability to do a new thing, to give you a fresh start, to give you a new opportunity at life. I don't know how many of you drive a lot or drive pretty frequently. Maybe, you have to commute or you drive quite a bit. But, it's interesting how this analogy of driving is really relevant to this experience of looking at our past. When you're behind the driver's seat and you're behind the wheel there, what would happen if you were to spend your entire journey in that car only looking at the rear view mirror? Imagine if you were driving and all you did was just stare at what was behind you all the time. What would happen to you? You would crash, right? You would crash because what's behind you is really not as important as what's in front of you. You see, the past, while it's important to be able to look at the past and learn from what's behind you, if you're always just staring at the past, you're not only gonna crash, but you're gonna miss out on what is in front of you, what God has in place in front of you. And so we need to learn to not look at the mistakes of our past, to not allow the baggage that we have had with us in the past and carry it with us throughout the rest of our lives. We need to allow God to take care of our past. He says, don't worry about the things of old. I will do a new thing. And as God promises to do a new thing with our past, he also promises to do something else in the book of Joel, chapter 2. Now, my friends, I read the last one really quickly, but I want you to turn here with me for this one because I want you to see this for yourself in your own Bibles. In the book of Joel, chapter 2, God promises to do something with our past experiences and maybe the years that we have lost and wasted living lives for ourselves. God says in Joel chapter 2, verse 25, something that he will do with our experience. I'll give you one more moment to get there. Joel chapter 2 and verse 25. Notice what God promises to do with our past. He says in Joel 2:25, I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the hopper, the destroyer, and the cutter, my great army, which I sent among you. God speaking to Joel, he says, I will restore to you the years that have been lost. Now, he uses an analogy here. He uses the analogy of agriculture. And, back in that time, and probably true even today, if this is your livelihood, as people would have tons of agriculture and if they were to have something like a plague of locusts come through and eat all of their supply, all that they've been producing, what would happen to that family, to that farmer? It would essentially ruin his year or even years to come. There are many who would depend on that. It would take maybe years for this crop to produce, and they depend on that for their livelihood. They depend on that to make it through the winter or whatever it was, to have enough money to be able to survive. And so for many people, when something like that would happen, it was basically almost impossible to recover from a loss like that. But God looks at that situation and he says, even though it may seem like it's impossible to make a recovery from something like this, even though it seems like you've had such a loss, years that have been lost because of what the enemy has done to rob you of those years of your life, even though that may be true, God says, I still have the power to restore those years. I still have the power to give you those years back to your life. My friends, in our own strength, it is impossible to truly recover, but God can restore those years that the enemy has stolen. And my story begins maybe for you it's not way back. For me it feels way back. My story begins in 1995 when I was born in the Loma Linda Medical Center just down the road. And I was born on January 8 in 1995. And I was born to a set of parents who loved me. And they wanted my best for my life. They had my best interest and really my spiritual life. They had that interest in mind as well. I wish you could see these pictures, but again, you'll be able to see them on the live stream. You know, both my mom and dad, they wanted me to love God with all my heart. And I'm sure maybe some of you parents can relate with that, wanting your kids to love God with all their heart and to really give their lives over to the Lord. My parents wanted that. But there was only one problem between what they wanted and what actually happened to me as a kid. And the one problem was this. While my parents wanted that, and while they talked about God in the home, I did not see that same love demonstrated in their lives. You know, parents, we want our children to love God with all their heart, but it must first begin with us. It must first begin with how we interact with our spouse or even with our children. It must come with how we live out the very love that we preach and we tell our kids about. We must be willing to live that out. And as I was growing up, I did not see that. I did not see that. I grew up in a broken home. My parents got divorced when I was only a few years old. And I remember at the time, I didn't realize growing up how much that affected me, but I was actually told a story. It was a story my dad told me. He said that he was sitting in the Campus Hill Church and he was there listening to the sermon, and the sermon was all about forgiveness. And the preacher said, you need to be willing to forgive no matter what situation. Even if there was a divorce in your family or in your life, you have to be willing to forgive. And my dad, who was sitting there in the pew listening to the sermon, all of a sudden he said he felt a fist come up to his face. And he looked down to the right, and sure enough, it was my 5-year-old fist in my dad's face. I didn't hit him, by the way, but I just put it up there. I don't even remember this story, but this is what he told me. I put it up to his face, and I looked at him in the eyes, and I said, you divorced mom. And I didn't recognize how much that impacted me as a little kid. You see, I was a kid, I was a young person who was trying to figure out how to reconcile the church and God with my home. And you know, as if to almost make things a little bit more challenging, I grew up kind of late in the game. What I mean by that is my oldest brother is 18 years older than me. My next brother is 16 years older. And then my third brother is 15 years older. And so I was basically born in a family of adults, and my kids, my brothers were already rebellious teenagers by the time that I was born. And so I began to see their examples. My oldest brother, I have a picture of him here. He was the one on the right in this picture. He was 18, the one that was 18 years older. He spent the majority of his life addicted to methamphetamines and drugs. He was an addict to meth for over 20 years. And during the course of me growing up, there were many moments where he threatened to kill one of us in the family, to kill one of my parents. There was many, crazy moments growing up with him in our home. Not only that, but my other brother, who was the one right above me in age, he was constantly in and out of prison for my entire life. He was, if you remember from a few months back when I shared my story about my brother, he was one day on the Channel 9 News going to prison, and his restitution was over $21 million for all the money that he had stolen. I grew up around him. And I grew up around another brother who, as he became a teenager, he began to move away from the Adventist faith that his parents had raised him in, and he became a strong atheist with no interest in God. You know, I grew up with this situation, but I do think there are some good developments in some of my brother's stories. I'm so thankful this morning that even though my oldest brother was addicted to meth for so many years, I think it's been about 6 years now that he's been sober. And God has given victory to him over that addiction in his life. He's now held a job for the longest he ever has in his life. He's finally living now on his own. And I just praise the Lord for what he's been doing in his life. He still has some way to go, as we all do, but I'm just thankful that God is slowly restoring a lot of years that he has lost. My other brother, who was on the Channel 9 News, I shared a picture of him before in one of my previous sermons here with you all. He has since given his life to God. And when he got out of prison about 6 months later, he got baptized. It's just a blessing to now have a Christian brother. And so I praise the Lord for what he's been doing in his life. And then my other brother, who's atheist, we are still praying for him. But we know that somehow, some way, God is going to reach him, and he's going to do something in his life. But that being said, this was the kind of home I grew up in, with cops being called, handcuffs being pulled, and this was the regular life I had. While on Sabbath, I was going to church, and while during the week, I was going to Loma Linda Academy, when I was at home, I had a lot of issues going on. And so on the outside, I looked really happy. I looked like a happy kid, but deep down, I was missing something. And so right as I was growing up in elementary, I started to turn at a very young age to take out a lot of the anger that was in my heart. I started to turn to a lot of bullying and fighting. It's actually pretty amazing because, I work at the conference today, and I see some people in the conference who were actually in administration at the time when I was in the office. And as a little kid, I was in trouble in the office, in the principal's office or whatever it was. And it's kind of funny because I can see some of the teachers who were there during that time, and they don't know. They don't know me. I know them, but they don't know me. They don't remember me probably. But that's the kind of kid I was. I was always in there. I was always in trouble. I was always in some fight, in some problem, because I was just such an angry kid from what was going on in my home life. And so, the other thing that I like to share, and I think this is relevant especially to the young people who are in the crowd here, is that to my parents, I looked like a really good kid. In fact, to my pastor, I looked like a good kid. And, I was good at putting on this fake persona that I loved God, and I knew the answers in Sabbath school, and I was really good at doing that. But deep in my heart, I knew that I truly did not know God. And so this morning, I don't know if you feel like maybe you're like that, but I want to let you know something. That even though at that moment, I didn't know God, and you may feel like maybe you just come to church as a young person because your parents make you come, and you don't truly feel like you know God. I'm here to tell you this morning that while you may not know God, and while I did not know God, God still knew who I was. God still knew me. And God had a plan to try to save this young person. God had a plan to try to do something in my life. And his plan began through a series of events. When I got into high school, I started to do a lot of drugs. And I was always high all the time. I was going to class high. You know, it was kind of funny. I would go to class with like these sunglasses on because I didn't want the teachers to see my red eyes. And I always kind of wondered, even to this day, why they never wondered why I was wearing sunglasses in a classroom, right? But that's what I would do. I would do that. I was always high in class, didn't care about school, didn't care about any of that. I was going to a ton of parties and just having what the world says is the time of your life. But as I began to do these things, I realized that it was not really the time of my life. In fact, I was more depressed than I'd ever been in my entire life. And I would have to do drugs. And once I would finish those drugs, I'd feel worse than before. And so I would start doing more drugs to help the worst feeling I had, which then helped me a little bit. But then right after I finished doing them and the effects wore off, I would feel worse than before. And I was down this downward path, literally to destruction, feeling like nothing I could do was going to help me. And I remember there was one occasion that sticks out to me deeply in my mind to this day. It was a time when I was at a party of one of my friends from the academy. We were at their house with a number of other classmates of mine there, and we were teenagers. We were 15 or so years old, and there was all kinds of alcohol there. There was all kinds of marijuana there, and we were just partying late into the night. And someone told us that the police was at the front of the house. And we look over the fence of the house, and sure enough, we see the cop car there with the lights off, and we're just freaking out. And I remember I decided I would make a run for it. And so it was actually somewhere here in Loma Linda, and I hopped into the other neighbor's backyard, and then I hopped another fence until finally I could get onto a street, and I ran all the way back home. And I climbed into, I snuck back into my room through the window in my house, and I looked at the clock, and it was about 1:30 in the morning. And in that moment, I had a realization. I realized that my friends were not there anymore. I realized that the music wasn't playing anymore. I realized that the drugs were starting to wear off. And I remember just looking up at the ceiling in my room and just feeling incredibly empty. And just asking myself, is this really all there is to life? I mean, is this what it is, like being on the run and being scared and, feeling depressed and having this false moment of happiness just to feel more depressed later? These friends who don't really care about me and, is this what my life is all about? I mean, is this what living is supposed to be like? And I just remember feeling so empty at that moment, recognizing that there was eternity in my heart, there was something in me that was trying to find that thing to satisfy me, and I couldn't find it in anything in this world. And so in that moment, I truly believe from that moment that God began to slowly introduce something into my life that would save me, that would fix the broken past that I have and help me to overcome the addictions that I became a slave to. And he used kind of an unpleasant time of my life to take advantage of that opportunity. It was after that event that I was really depressed, and I had many suicidal thoughts, thinking about even taking my very own life. And I hit a rock bottom point. And I don't know how many of you this morning have ever been there, have ever felt like you've hit a rock bottom point in your experience in your life. But I was there. I was at that rock bottom point. And what I learned is something beautiful about God. And don't miss this, is that sometimes God allows us to hit rock bottom so that we can recognize that he is the rock at the bottom. It was at my rock bottom moment that I recognized that he was the rock, that he was the only one that could give me true satisfaction, true fulfillment in my life. And it was at the lowest moment of my life that a friend, a classmate of mine, introduced me to the rock, Jesus Christ. I went to school one day and I heard about a classmate of mine who nearly died. He was on a drug one night and he nearly overdosed. He said he felt like he was going to die that night. His heart rate was beating so fast. He felt like it was just going to come out of his chest. And he was going through a terrible feeling where he felt like he was coming in and out, like he was falling asleep. And he was so afraid that he was going to die that night. But he remembered the faith that his parents had raised him in as Adventists. And he decided to say a prayer that if God would save his life, that he would begin to live differently, and that he would give his life to God. And it was after praying that prayer that he said he felt a peace come upon him. And I remember this story was just circulating throughout my class here at the academy. And I remember being so surprised that this classmate of all people would have a conversion experience. Because this classmate of mine was a really bad kid. He was a lot worse than I was in my mind. He was very popular. He had a lot of girls who liked him. And I thought to myself, why would he throw all of that away to become a Christian? People were talking about him and people didn't want to hang out with him anymore. He wasn't cool anymore because all he wanted to talk about was God. And so here he was at school in the library by himself, just reading. And I remember coming to him that day in the library, and the first thing that I noticed that was so weird was the big smile that he had on his face. You know, when you're like cool, or when you think you're cool, I guess, and you like take a picture, like how are you supposed to take that picture? Kind of like mad, right? You guys know what I'm saying? Have you seen people like that? They just take pictures and they're just like mad. Like you can't smile because that doesn't mean you're not cool if you smile. And it's kind of weird. I never got it. But that's how I was too. And this guy was always angry. He was always mad. He was always walking around mad dogging everybody. And now he's got this big smile on his face. And I see him and I say, hey, how's it going, man? And he looks up with this big smile and he says, hey, Eric, how are you doing, man? And I was like, this guy's weird. This guy is so weird. What's happened to him? And he's like, yeah, take a seat, man. And I'm like, oh, what are you reading there? And he found some book there in the library that he could read. It was one of those older SDA Bible commentaries, the big green book. And I look at him reading this. I'm like, what are you reading? He's like, oh yeah, man, I just found this in here. It's like loaded with a bunch of Ellen White quotes and it's awesome. Like you should check out what I'm reading. And I looked at him like, are you serious? Like you're reading this? No way. And I just remember him telling me his story of how he came to God, his conversion experience. And by the end of the story, my heart was so touched. I recognized for the first time that whatever this guy experienced and whatever he was experiencing right then, it was the very thing that I needed to satisfy the void that was in my heart. It was the very thing that would truly give me satisfaction in my life. So at the end of that testimony of his, I decided to join him he invited me to join him in some Bible studies that he was having at his house. And I decided to join him. And let's just say, by God's grace, the rest was history. Because as I was attending those Bible studies, as God's word was being lifted up, as Jesus was being lifted up, he was drawing me day by day. It was an amazing experience. I don't know if I have time. I'm not sure when I'm supposed to end here, but I just got to say this because I don't know if there's a young person here that maybe was struggling with this. Right as I was going to these Bible studies, I remember there was an event that was coming up at a church up in Upland, and my friend told me about it. He said, "Hey, my mom is going to this event. There's these people who are like from Hollywood that are like coming in, and it's gonna be like really good, man. You'll wanna come." And so I was just starting to go to these Bible studies, and I was pretty interested, and I was like, "Ooh, from Hollywood? That sounds kind of cool." So who are they? Like, what are they called? And he's like, they're called like Little Light something, like Little, forget, like Little Light. Oh, I think it's like Studios or something like that. Little Light Studios. And I was like, oh, okay, pretty cool. So they used to be from Hollywood. Yeah, they were like directors in Hollywood. Oh, wow, okay. So I decide to go. And if any of you have ever been to a seminar by Little Light Studios, you know that it's pretty eye-opening. At least it was for me. And, I was really addicted to video games. And I remember on Sabbath, they continued their seminar. And I asked my friend what time the seminar was going to be at, and he told me that it was going to be all afternoon. And I had to be back home around 6 o'clock because every week I would play a certain video game of mine with some friends at this exact time. And so because I was so addicted to video games and I knew I had to be there, I thought to myself, okay, if this is going to be going on in the afternoon, hopefully it'll be done by the time I get back home so I could get on and start playing my video game. Well, if you've ever been, or if Little Light Studios has ever been here, you know that they are how do I say this? They don't have a lack for content because they can just keep going and going and going. And 2 o'clock came by and they were going. And 3 o'clock went by and they were still going. 4 o'clock, they were still going. 5 o'clock, and I thought they were going to finally be over, and they were just about to start another seminar. And here I am in Upland trying to get back to Loma Linda by 6 o'clock, and there's a new seminar coming at 5 o'clock, and I'm thinking, what in the world am I going to do? So I text my brother, and I say, hey, would you mind getting online in this video game and telling my friends I'm going to be a little bit late? And he logs on. He tells me he will. And I'm sitting there in the church, and the new seminar is about to come on the screen. And it's like in the transition period where if there was a screen here, it was like blue. And the guy's up in the front kind of like fiddling with his computer and fiddling with the HDMI cable. And he's just wondering, or I'm just wondering, like, what's the next topic going to be about? And he's just over there fiddling, and it's a blue screen. And there I was waiting for my brother to respond to see what my friends would say. And my brother texts me back, and he says, hey, are you sure you gave me like the right name? for your friends, because I messaged this person you told me to message, and they say they don't really know who you are. And this might sound kind of humorous if you've never played a video game, but I played with these guys like every day. And I was like, doesn't know who I am? That's so weird. And I looked up from my phone after he said that, and I looked up on the screen, and the screen now had the next topic. And the next topic was, guess what? It's about video games. And the picture that they decided to choose was none other than the game that I was on my way home to play. And I looked at that, and you know, there's some things that maybe don't make sense to other people, and maybe it doesn't make sense to you. But in that moment, I just knew that God wanted me to be there, to stay and to watch that seminar. And that somehow, some way, I don't know how this happened or what to this day, but that person did not know, apparently, who I was. And when I saw that, and I saw the next topic, I knew that God wanted me to stay there that night and listen to that seminar. So I decided to do it. And by the end of that seminar, I realized that I was wasting so much time playing video games. I was wasting so much precious time that God wanted me to use for His kingdom, for His glory. I realized that the games that I was playing that were all about killing others, casting spells, demonic spells on other people, were nothing that a Christian should be playing. It's no different than being on the screen and being on a set of cards that are right in front of you that you think, oh man, or a board that you think, oh man, this is satanic or whatever it is. Just because it's on a screen, somehow I thought to myself it was okay. But as I was watching this, I recognized that God didn't want me to be a part of that anymore, that He wanted to call me higher. And so, man, I don't know how it happened, but some things that they shared with me that night somehow gave me the strong enough conviction that I had to go home that night and I had to delete that video game once and for all. And after being addicted for years, by God's grace, I have never played those video games since. I deleted an account that if I were to try to sell online was worth over $2,000. But I realized that what was that in exchange for all that God wanted to give to me? It was nothing. So God began to work in my life, and if you'll notice on the screen, if you watch this later on this week, you'll notice a picture that I show here is a picture of me not long after that in those series of Bible studies. I finally went to a youth summer program at the conference called Youth Rush. And if you've never, as a young person, if you've never experienced God, this is the place to do it. Because I started to go out and I started to canvas and I started to share with people at the doors about what Jesus was doing in my life. And at the end of that 10-week summer program, you'll see a picture here in my presentation of me finally recommitting my heart to God through baptism. And my past was finally reconciled. My present finally began to make sense. And I finally felt the assurance from God that my future was now secure. God was able to do that in my life, and He can do that for you as well. As we get ready to close this morning, I want to read a verse that never gets old reading, and it should never get old for you to read. It's a verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 17, which says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ." Now, friends, when it says anyone, it means anyone. It doesn't matter what has happened before. It doesn't matter the baggage you have. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creature. Some versions say a new creation. And then it says, the old has passed away. behold, the new has come. God began to show me that he wanted my old life to literally pass away. I had to let go of those past things of my life so that the new could come in. I had to have a funeral. You know, my baptism, we oftentimes look at the baptism in a positive way, and I believe we should. It is a resurrection. But with the resurrection taking place, a funeral also happens at the same time. It was a funeral of my past life, and now my new life had come. God was able to do that in my life. And I was only following his footsteps. Because when Jesus came to this world to begin his ministry, he also was baptized. And when he was baptized, the sky opened and a voice from heaven came where his father said, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased." And I believe, friends, that when I got baptized, it was at that moment that God was saying the same thing to me. This is my son in whom I am well pleased. When you get baptized, the Father says the same thing to you. This is my daughter. This is my son in whom I am well pleased. And God then takes you to begin the earthly ministry he has for you on this earth. And God began to take me all kinds of places. I could share so many stories, but I want to just close, and I'm closing my laptop here so that you know I'm done after this story. I want to just share a powerful story that happened to me. It was just a few years into being a Christian when I received a message on my Facebook. I was now about to finish high school. I was on my way to Souls West Bible College, and I was going to go there this next year. I was finishing high school, and I had already done 2, and I was about to do a third summer of Youth Rush canvassing here in the Southeastern California Conference. And I was just, on fire, excited. And I received this message on Facebook from a very, very old friend. He said, "Hey, Eric, do you think you'd be willing to study the Bible with me sometime?" And I look at the name of who this friend was, and I was so shocked. This was the friend who I would have never imagined would ask me for a Bible study, and let me tell you why. This was the friend that would essentially supply me with drugs when I was in high school. He wasn't like a serious, big-time drug dealer or anything like that, but he, if you could say, he would sell some drugs here and there, and he was the guy that I would get my drugs from. And here's this guy writing a message to me on Facebook wanting Bible studies. I had to look back at the name, is this for real right now? And I look back and I respond to him. I say, of course. And I meet up with him and I have the first Bible study with him. And I just remember being so amazed. Here was a guy who was dealing me drugs, and now I'm dealing him the bread of life. Now I'm dealing him something so much better. I started Bible studies with him. We went through months and months and months of Bible studies, meeting up every week. And the time finally came where I had to go off to school. And I want to share this story specifically because I find it amazing that while I was gone, there was a church in the area that was doing an evangelistic series. And it was none other, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this church before, but it was none other than the Mentone Seventh-day Adventist Church. And my friend decided to go to that series. And while I was just finishing a class out at Souls West, I got a text message from another friend. And it was a picture of this friend in that I guess it's new now. You guys have redone it. But it was in the old baptismal tank right here at Mentone. He was there, and he was giving his life to God through baptism. And I just remember looking at that and so much joy coming into my heart for what God was able to do and how he was able to truly restore a lot of years that the enemy had stolen and lost. This morning, I don't know where you're at. I don't know if you need to give your heart to God. I don't know if you have never gotten baptized and you need to make that decision to give your heart fully to God. I don't know if you're in that category, or I don't know if this morning feel like maybe because of all that's been going on with this world, it seems like your spirituality of your life has been on the decline and you feel like you need a fresh experience, a fresh start with God once again. Wherever you're at this morning, I want to encourage you to make that decision, whether it's a recommitment or whether it's a commitment for the first time. I want to encourage you to make the best decision of your life. My life has never been better since following Jesus, and he can do that for you as well.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us today for our church worship service here at the Mentone Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're here to serve, so if you have a Bible question or if you have a prayer need, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our phone number is 909-492-0738, or you can email us at office@mentonechurch.org. And if you find yourself in our area, which is in the inland area of Southern California, please come by and visit us. We would love to meet you. And in the meantime, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to click on the little bell. That way you'll receive notifications when we are live streaming. God bless. Have a great week.